Breaking news from WRAL.
Good afternoon, I'm David Crabtree. The jury in the John Edwards trial has reached a verdict on one of 6 counts. Within the past 2 minutes, they sent the judge a note saying they were unable to reach a unanimous verdict on the other 5 counts. Aaron Hartness, who just came out of the courtroom, joining us now by phone in Greensboro. Aaron, this note was just passed to the judge in the past 3 or 4 minutes, right?
That's right, David. So the jury came back, they went back in about 3:20 or so this afternoon. The judge encouraged them to try to reach a verdict on all these counts. They knocked at about 4 o'clock with another note, and this note read that they felt that they had exhausted every aspect. Those were their words, exhausted every aspect, and we don't know what that verdict is. The judge right now has given an opportunity to the lawyers to argue what should be done in this case, and it looks like there's some movement coming out of the courtroom right now, so I'm gonna go find out what that is. Actually, I'm hearing reporters scream not guilty right now, so apparently count 3 was not guilty. Is that correct? Okay, I just heard from CBS News, our partners of course, that count 3 is not guilty. So John Edwards has been found not guilty. And did the judge declare mistrial on the other counts? Okay, nobody seems to know that. All the reporters ran out just saying not guilty on count 3. So we'll have to get back to you on what will happen in the other counts. Presumably what would happen in this situation is the judge would declare a mistrial, and then it would be up to federal prosecutors to determine whether or not to, again, retry John Edwards.
Wow.
Aaron Hartness, thank you for that. Folks, you're watching and you're listening to this being this developing story, breaking story, being processed as we are. You just heard Aaron Hartness say she was told by her counterparts at CBS News, John Edwards found not guilty on 1 count of the 6-count indictment. The jury has said it's unable to reach a verdict on the other 5 counts.
Of course, we have now learned since I last spoke to you that the judge has declared a mistrial on the 5 counts that the jury has not agreed on. The jury found John Edwards not guilty on count 3, which was a count of accepting illegal campaign contributions from heiress Bunny Mellon in 2008. It'll be interesting to hear from the jury about why they reached that agreement.
Stacey, you've had a chance to talk with people since this jury sent its note and made its verdict known. What are you hearing?
Well, we were able to just briefly talk to Mr. and Mrs. Edwards, John's parents, who have come to this trial every day, told us they have driven from Robbins, this small North Carolina town where Edwards went to high school and grew up. Mom said, I'm just too emotional right now. And then Mr. Edwards, when asked about what does he think about the jury's decision, he said, this says it all. Simple comments from simple country folks who have been by their son's side. Again, really the most sympathetic characters I feel in this entire trial. I was actually handed the actual copy of the verdict sheet. It has been filed May 31st. This is Edwards' get out of jail free card. No unanimous decision written by each of the 5 counts, and then the not guilty X by count 3.
So from what we understand, he is behind those doors, about to come out in any minute and any moment. And Kelsey, as we wait, what happens next? Do they prosecute again, or is it just too expensive to go down this road again?
Well, I've talked to a number of attorneys who, this is their opinion, of course, but a number of attorneys who apparently John Edwards is waiting behind that door right now. And as you heard from the attorney there, that he would like to get in his car.
And there is John Edwards, followed by his dad.
There's
and
Wallace
his mom
and Bobby.
and Kate. We'll see if he does stop, may have anything to say on his way out.
It appears he is approaching the microphone. He's going to give a comment to the media. Let's listen into John Edwards.
Well, I wanted to say first, thank you for the jurors and their incredibly hard work and their diligence. They took their job very, very seriously. That while I do not believe I did anything illegal or ever thought I was doing anything illegal, I did an awful, awful lot that was wrong. And there is no one else responsible for my sins. None of the people who came to court and testified are responsible. Nobody working for the government is responsible. I am responsible. And if I want to find the person who should be held accountable for my sins, honestly, I don't have to go any further than the mirror. It's me. It is me and me alone.
Now, we had noticed that John Edwards and his family had gone back into the courtroom, but you can see there he is now leaving with his daughter. They are heading to the car right now, and if you would listen to that woman a little earlier, she had asked that people let him get to his car after he made that statement. He spoke for about 5 or 6 minutes. He was choked up during the statement that he gave. He took full responsibility for his actions. He also thanked the jurors at length. He spoke very emotionally about his own family, his children, his daughter Kate, who has stood by his side every day and appeared in court with him every day. He's talked about his younger children, and he even talked about Quinn, his daughter, with Riel Hunter. He's there getting into that SUV, and I guess he's at this hour a very, very relieved and exhausted man. Well, the jurors in this case spent weeks listening to testimony and days deliberating, and we hope to hear more from them and about them in the coming days. The judge says she'll release their names, their hometowns, next Thursday. She said she wants to give them time to get back to their lives.
We have David Kirby on the phone. He went to law school with John and Elizabeth Edwards. He has been friends with them for a long, long time, and he was a law partner with John Edwards. David, thank you so much for joining us. Have you spoken with John, and do you know how he's feeling right now?
Well, I haven't spoken to John today, but I've spoken to him a couple times while the jury was out. I know he was very anxious, but he was confident in the jury system. The case obviously is not completely concluded because there's a mistrial as to 5 counts, but at least for the moment, this part is over, and hopefully the case has come to conclusion forever. I hope so.
Join us tonight at 7 o'clock. We have a live 30-minute special with expert analysis and some new reaction to this verdict. That's here on WRAL News tonight at 7.
I want to make sure that everyone hears from me and from my voice that while I do not believe I did anything illegal or ever thought I was doing anything illegal, I did an awful lot that was wrong. And there is no one else responsible for my sins.
John Edwards, mea culpa, on the courthouse steps as the jury ends years of curiosity, speculation, and finger-pointing. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm David Crabtree. 9 days of deliberations ended this afternoon with only one verdict out of 6 charges against the former senator and presidential candidate. The jury found him not guilty of illegal campaign contributions from heiress Bunny Mellon, checks cashed after Edwards dropped out of the race. As for the other 5 charges, the judge declared a mistrial. The jury simply could not reach a unanimous verdict on those counts. Over the next half hour, we'll talk to a former federal prosecutor and a political scientist to break down what happened in the courtroom and what happened inside the Edwards campaign. We want to know what you want to know. Tweet us your questions. Use hashtag John Edwards and we'll pose some of your questions to our experts. We start, however, with our own expert, our eyes and ears inside that camera-less federal courtroom. Stacey Davis here to sum up today's event. Stacey?
Well, David, I think it was a fittingly bizarre end to what has to be one of the most bizarre and unusual political corruption trials ever of our times. After passing a note that they had reached a decision on all 6 of the felony counts against this former presidential candidate, we would learn, in fact, that they had not, that they could not decide all of these counts except for one, and that decision was not guilty. And of course, that indecision led to much elation in Edwards and his family, although he was very subdued in court. Inside, he simply leaned back in his chair. Then he put his hand to his head, he slowly rubbed his forehead, rubbed his eyes, and then once there was a recess, he was able to turn to his daughter, Kate. He gave her a big hug and a kiss. He turned to his 80-year-old father and his 78-year-old mother, who have driven from Robbins, the small North Carolina town where Edwards grew up. He gave both of them a big hug, a tender kiss for his mother, and then he hugged all 3 of his defense attorneys. David?
Stacey Davis live in Greensboro. Stacey, thank you. Now, the trial took more than a month. Deliberations went for 9 days. John Edwards spoke for less than 5 minutes, much of it about the people most important to him through the entire ordeal. As Stacey mentioned, his parents and then his children.
Kate, who most all of you have seen, has been here every single day. She has been here no matter what, no matter how awful and painful. A lot of the evidence was for her. Evidence about her dad, evidence about her mom, who she loves so, so dearly, but she never once flinched. She said, Dad, I love you. I'll be there for you no matter what. And I'm so proud to have had her with me through all this process. And then finally, Emma, who turned 14 recently, Emma Claire, and Jack, who just turned 12, who I take care of every day. And I've not been able to see them quite as much, but I see them in the morning, I get their breakfast ready, get them off to school, and then we get home at night and we all eat supper together. And I love them both so dearly, and they're such an important part of every day of my life. And then finally, my precious Quinn. Who I love more than any of you could ever imagine. And I am so close to and so, so grateful for.
This case with John Edwards has touched plenty of other lives in the past 4 years. Kelsey Carlson has been following this case since it began. She joins us now with some of their opinions. Kelsey?
David, we're hearing from a lot of people who've been involved in this case and in John Edwards' life. We heard from David Kirby earlier this evening. He's a longtime friend, went to UNC Law School with John Edwards and his wife, Elizabeth, and he was a law partner with John Edwards, went through a lot of tragedies and a lot of triumphs with John Edwards, was with him when his son Wade was killed. And we talked to him tonight about what he thinks is next for John Edwards. You know, Edwards himself said today he still wants to do something meaningful in his life. Here's what David Kirby had to say.
I think John Edwards doesn't know what's next for him. I think he knows this is a time of reflection. I hope that the prosecution will end here. I hope this is it. I hope he's allowed to move on with his life. Despite missteps, despite misjudgments and maybe some poor judgments he's made in the past, he is a very gifted person. And I think that he has a lot that he can do. He has a lot that he can offer.
We also heard from a longtime friend of Rielle Hunter's today, Pigeon O'Brien. She is one of the sources for the National Enquirer, somebody who helped to break this story and put it out there before the public. She sent us this statement saying, "I still feel absolutely terrible for all the people who believed in this man. We've mapped a neat picture of how politicians in the future could cover up their misdeeds. And that's super scary. What should never change is that people have a right to know not just what a politician says, but the path that he walks." And I just got off the phone with Brian Huffman. He was the decorator, the friend of Bunny Mellon, that 101-year-old heiress who paid for some of the living expenses for Rielle Hunter. And Brian was the person who the checks were written to. He gave those to Andrew Young and his wife, and they were cashed in Andrew Young's, his wife's maiden name. Brian said that he could not speak on the record, but it did direct me to his attorney, Carol Kendrick, who says Brian regrets that there's no resolution in this situation. We're still in limbo to some degree because a decision was not made one way or the other. David, and a lot of people are feeling right now like they can't say a whole lot because there is still that chance that the government could come back and try to retry this case.
Kelsey, and we've just got a little more information on that has just happened because this case, as you can see, is still very active. In fact, the Associated Press is now reporting that the Justice Department is not likely to retry John Edwards on those 5 outstanding charges. Again, that just in, we are quoting this from the Associated Press.